I hope everyone's well today, and I'm going to do a video around the subject of truth and how do we know what's true and what's not. So I thought I'd do a little video this afternoon. I wasn't quite sure what topic. Had a few different ideas running through my mind, and at times like that I always kind of return to, well, what's going to be most useful for the viewers to hear? You know, how can I help or try to help? So what I want to say, and it won't be a long video, hopefully not anyway, hopefully it'll be interesting though, is, you know, how do we know what is true and what is not? How can we prevent ourselves from drowning in information, from being kind of consumed by opinion and becoming confused and bewildered? Because we live in an age saturated with data, information and opinion. Some of it very aggressive opinion, some of it very intolerant opinion, some of it very ill thought through opinion. So it's very easy to become disenchanted, let alone not knowing what's true and what's not. And it is important that we try to ascertain what is true and what's not, isn't it? At least try to, in an age of division and confusion, hysteria. Now, for me, I think there's a difference between the truth and lies. I think I've done similar videos to this previously, but there's nothing wrong with me coming at it from a different angle. So my own personal opinion is that the Western world is in such a demoralised state of confusion and division and hopelessness and meaninglessness at the moment that before we can somehow try to ascertain, is there a golden thread? Is there some kind of transcendent meaning for enough people to coalesce around? Is there a central idea that can start to glue the culture together? I think we're quite far off from that place, if we ever will get there. Lots and lots of people who are theorising and philosophising and having great conversations, writing essays and creating content and trying to answer questions that I'm trying to answer. But before we can get to that, we need to decide, well, what's not true. And isn't it quite a depressing state of affairs when you think about it, that, well, this is how I interact with the world and understand the world as it is at the moment, is I try to identify, well, what's quite clearly a lie, and then I can distance myself from it. I can not give it my attention. So that's, and it is a world, as I'm sure you'll agree, that's run on lies and deception and control and tyranny at the moment. So that's, I think a lie is easy to identify itself because a lie contains no grain of truth in it. So what is the difference in the truth and truth? Well, the truth for me, I don't know. I personally don't think anybody has a right to say that they are in possession of the truth. I think only God knows the truth, is the truth. So this might feed into why I don't particularly like truthers and the truther movement. It's not for me. There might be some very interesting material there and ideas to consider, but I also feel that there's a bit of hubris attached to it, a bit of arrogance attached to it. To call yourself a truther, you're bringing the truth to the world. I'm not sure about that. But the truth and truth are, for me, this again, always my own personal opinion, obviously. Truth, though, is something that is personal. Truth is, again, this is my understanding, is how I understand myself, my emergent understanding of myself, how honest I am, how courageous I am, how I interact and converse and connect with other people and with the wider world, how I articulate, how I show up, how I express myself, how authentic I am. I think all of those different traits and concepts fall within the remit and the wider concept of truth. So the reason I'm saying all this is because in order to be of maximum effectiveness, we have to try to make sure, I'm talking to myself as much as anyone else here, that we don't divert our attention to places where our attention shouldn't be. And this isn't even talking about all of the other distractions that are, that are very prevalent in society at the moment. I'm talking about if you are very interested and curious in wanting to know what's going on in this crazy world, we have to be very careful about where we give our attention, who we listen to, because this is how I see it, and actually it's going to apply to you watching this now. What I'm about to say is all I know to be real. And I know that reality, deep reality, goes way beyond, what we can see and hear and touch and smell. But all I really know to be real at the moment is that I'm sitting in the living room here. I can see the window onto the street there, see some trees, some nice greenery, and my phone is right in front of me and I'm talking into it and doing this video. And that's real for me at the moment. Everything else, when I finish this video and I go on my phone and open a Telegram or a WhatsApp, or I look at a Substack essay or whatever, that's all secondary information for me. I have to be careful that I don't take any of it as gospel. I don't automatically believe what is being imparted to me. Secondary, anything that goes beyond what we can directly interact with ourselves, or we can directly experience through our senses, everything else is secondary information, however that presents itself, and is there to reinforce or to challenge or to demolish or to refine what we already think. So the reason I'm saying this is, it is absolutely essential that we remember this. In this age where there's so much information at our fingertips, lots of different platforms, and content creators, of which I am one, that we also remember to really cultivate our own, remember that our own experience is unique, and that all we really know to be true, for sure, is our own personal experience in at that particular time. So this is important when we're considering. I always used to draw a distinction between what went on in the COVID years. You all know my thoughts on that, and if you don't, just go back to 2020 to 2023 and look at some of my videos. Now, I used to draw a distinction between that and between a lot of the other psyops, which I was more open-minded to, I would say, because I could see how society had changed with my own eyes. The people around me, how they had changed, how they'd become crazed, how they'd become hysterical, how society, both close to me and my immediate sphere around me, people had changed. They'd become hypnotized, they'd become deluded, they'd changed. Whereas, take something like around about the same time, the 2020 election in America, again, which, I had my own thoughts on at the time. I was interested in what was going on, what people were telling me about how there was potential electoral corruption and that Trump won it, and all that side of things. Now, I could never really definitively believe something about that, even though I had my opinions. I wasn't 100% behind what I believed, like I was with COVID, because I couldn't prove what was being said. it was interesting what was being said. There was lots of evidence presented. But because I was never going to be able to even scratch the surface of all the information and the various different angles and agendas that lots and lots of different people had, whilst I had my opinion, I couldn't give it, I couldn't talk about it with the same, I don't know, say gravitas that I could talk about what was going on in the name of COVID and the measures that were justified to the population as a result of what we were told was an allegedly killer disease. So I hope you understand the difference the point that I'm trying to make here. It's like when I think about, what we're told about the war in Ukraine and Russia, Israel, Palestine, we've got to be very, very careful really. It's fine to have an opinion. Absolutely. Being an open-minded person, being someone who's interested in this case, when we're talking about wars or alleged wars, being interested in geopolitics. Absolutely. All I'm saying though is try and wrap this up, to try to bring a degree of clarity and sanity and balance to how I see the world. I try to keep it simple. So when I say try to keep it simple, I read around a lot of different subjects and topics. I'm very curious and I want to know what's going on, but also I don't commit ideologically to a position unless I know 100% what I'm talking about is real. For example, what we're on in the COVID years. And in doing that, it allows me to buy back some time so I can do other things like actual reading, going out in nature. So I've developed a bit of an ability to be able to distance myself from a lot of information which I deem to be noise. And I think that's I'm glad I've got the ability to be able to do that, because I don't need to know everything that there is to know anyway, because that's impossible. So I try to always each day, I'm like, okay, well, how is this world lying to me at the moment? And I do have a good instinct for that in life generally. Bullshit detector, some people will call that. But again, I try to distance myself from the truther community, because as I say, I don't really like I just don't really identify with it. I try to remain, and I'm saying try, I'm not saying succeed, I'm saying I'm trying to strive for humility in getting closer to God and realising that I will never be in possession of the truth, but I can develop and strive to bring into fruition and imbue with my own life what is my truth, which I've already talked about. So I really hope this video helps in some way. I really do. When I'm creating these videos, I want it to be I want to kind of be of service to people. Now you might listen to me and think he's talking an absolute load of rubbish, and if you do that, that's fine. I'm sure someone will be thinking that. But if this helps, if this angle of thought helps somebody to clear the mental clutter, to free themselves in some way from distractions, and to have a bit of a mental shift in how they're processing information, then it's done its job. So that's all I want to say, really, I suppose. So, but I'd love to find out what you think about what I've said there. So do leave a comment. If you think this video will help anyone else, feel free to share it. And if you do watch my videos but you've not yet subscribed, just click the subscribe button if you don't mind. That would be a big help. And I'll speak to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.